I'm happiest in the saddle.
A fellow sportsman.
I am an FBI agent!
Great Scott!
What do you say we cut the chit-chat? A-hole!
Dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria!
Come with me if you want to live.
Hello, and welcome to Retro Ramble. I'm Charlie McGee.
I'm George McGee.
And this time, we are careering all the way into the future from our last episode of The Lost Boys, which was 1987, to which year, George?
1987.
Oh, right, so we are definitely stuck in the 80s.
We've definitely done a lot of 1987 this year, because I think RoboCop was also 1987.
We love that year.
Great year.
Great year. A great year for film, yeah. Well, it's Lethal Weapon. It's Christmas.
I was going to say, what time of year is it, though, Charlie?
It's Christmas. It's the time of giving. Holidays are coming. Holidays are coming.
It's time of miracles, Theo. Sorry, wrong film.
Wrong film. So, yeah, what better film? We did a Richard Donner production in our last episode, The Lost Boys. Thank you for all the feedback and shares. That was obviously a popular one for Halloween. And with it being end of November, Black Friday, you can all go into shops and kill each other. But before then, to get you in the Christmas spirit, we've gone back to a Richard Donner directorial, which is Lethal Weapon, the first film. Not Loaded Weapon 1.
No.
And not Lethal Weapon 2, 3, or 4.
Or even Lethal Weapon, the series.
Yeah, so we will be spending some time talking about first memories, why this was a big film for us and for everybody. And then George will explain why it was successful, because we'll talk about production.
I know.
I know why it was successful. And why we are not getting too old for this shit. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about the amazing casting of Danny Glover and Mel Gibson. We'll go to all the usual places that we do, going through the film. Then we will do some Coulda Woulda Shoulda, some suspicious spin-offs. But if you're not sure what to expect, here's George with a quick word with some general housekeeping.
Yes, so we are movie lovers. We are not film professionals. So whilst we aim for accuracy, there may be the odd bit of trivia that we miss or sometimes may get wrong. But it comes from a good place. So yeah, this is all about Charlie and I going back and looking at the movies that we grew up with and the movies that we love. Do we still love them? Do they still hold up? We're going to be going into...
Why do we love them?
Why do we love them? We're going to be going into these films in great detail, so there will be spoilers from the very off. Because these are adult films dealing with mature themes, there is going to be some potentially fruity language, so be potential if you have anyone that could be easily offended. And is there anything else? Oh, there will be probably some bad impressions as well.
Yeah, we're just not sure who we will inhibit as we go through this.
True, I think we might surprise each other.
So it's 1987. Obviously, you were maybe watching The Lost Boys in terms of music. It was U2, With or Without You, or George Michael, I Want Your Sex. I don't know which aisle you fell into, George. Probably more of a U2 guy, yeah?
No, it's all about the George Michael. All about George Michael.
But many other big films from this year. Obviously, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Predator, which we've covered before. Mm-hmm. And obviously saying the Lost Boys. But it's Christmas. It's Lethal Weapon, and here it is. Here's what George and I think revisiting it today.
He's a criminal's worst nightmare. A cop who enjoys the danger.
No guns, no jiu-jitsu, just bring him down.
Do you really want to jump? Well, then that's fine with me. Come on.
Wait, what do you mean? Wait a minute. What the...
He was ready to retire. Now, he's gonna wish he had.
Gun!
Raj, meet your new partner.
New partner? Too old for this.
If these guys can just stand each other.
What you got in there?
4-inch Smith?
A lot of old-timers carry those.
The bad guys don't stand a chance.
Don't kill anybody. Don't kill anybody.
I'm too old for this.
Are you as good as you say you are?
Nobody can touch me.
Suppose we better register you as a lethal weapon. You ever met anybody you didn't kill?
Well, I haven't killed you yet.
So, George, 1987, March.
Yep.
How did we get the film that is Lethal Weapon?
Well, we have touched on this a little bit. Obviously, there is that sort of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, or whatever you want to call it. There's a few names that have come up across various different Retro Ramble episodes. One of them is Joel Silver, who is a big Hollywood producer that's produced this. He's produced a lot of our favourite 80s and 90s, and even now he's still producing movies. I'm repeating myself, but he is the man behind obviously Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, Predator,
The Matrix
movies, Commando, amongst others, Last Boy Scout. So yeah, he's a big Hollywood producer. And we've also talked about Shane Black a little bit, because Shane Black was one of the actors in Predator.
We definitely talked about it.
Hawkins was the first person to get picked off, the geeky guy with glasses with the comic books. But he is primarily known as a writer-director, and this was his first script sale, I should say, technically. So
this is what made Shane Black Shane Black.
Yes. This is what put him on the map and put him on the road to becoming, for a time, the highest paid script writer in Hollywood. And even in this situation, so he's 23 years old and trying to become an actor when he wrote the first draft of Lethal Weapon, and he wrote that in apparently around 6 weeks. He said the first draft he did was terrible. Like, looking back, he said it was very different, much darker, had a different plot. It was much more over the top. It had, I think, the ending accumulated in the Hollywood sign on fire, and it was raining cocaine or heroin.
George, this isn't Demolition Man.
There was lots of... Does it sound like Demolition? Maybe that's where Joel Silver did Demolition Man. There you go.
That's where he got the idea. Yeah. He basically wanted to see the Hollywood sign on fire.
On fire.
At some point in
and it's raining coke, but just in his office. I didn't say that. So yeah, it was a bit different. But so he went back and did a few redrafts, but he was paid. So considering this was his first bought script, so he had done another script, which I'll touch on later. But his first script, he was paid $250,000, so yeah, $250,000 up front, and then another $150,000 after the movie was produced. So
this is in 1987.
And he's 23 years old.
So he's unheard of.
And this is his second script.
That's incredible.
It's interesting because obviously there's quite a few changes to his script from that initial idea. But yeah, this is pretty much, as you say, what made Shane Black. And Shane Black would, just to give you a bit of background, he would go on to, I think he did some uncredited work behind the scenes on Predator. So he was hired by Joel Silver, became basically a mentor figure to him, and basically said, I'm going to look after you, kid. I'm going to look after you. And so I remember
us covering this in the Predator episode. Didn't he do some rewrites?
Yes, uncredited rewrites. So basically, Joel Silver basically hired him as an uncredited script
just
doctor.
Sounds to me like they had a few brewskis after shooting, while Arnie and the other guys were pumping iron and running 40k. They were probably getting on it, and he's like, I think that the character could do this. It's like, you've got it. Yeah. Okay, do these rewrites.
And at the time, because Joel Silver saw he had something, he was like, right, I'll give you the part in this film, just to keep him in work, to keep him on a salary,
keep writing.
But yeah, he would go on to do, he's done loads of stuff. So Long Kiss Goodnight, Last Boy Scout. He did drafts on Lethal Weapon 2. I think that he only did the drafts on the first two. And obviously Shane Black in his own right has become a writer and director, so he does his own stuff now. So he did the very brilliant Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which arguably got Robert Downey Jr. the role of Iron Man, because that kind of put Robert Downey Jr. back on the map.
And speaking of Iron Man, he did Iron Man 3.
He did Iron Man 3, and he also did the very brilliant and probably not very seen The Nice Guys,
which I think we both agree is one of the best comedies to come out in the last few years.
Yeah, and he also did the last Predator film, but the less said about that, the better.
I still haven't seen that yet. George won't let me.
garbage, Kent.
George won't let me see it.
So where were we? Yes. So in Black's original script, it spent a lot more time on the grim Vietnam backstories. It was a lot more violent. It fleshed out the sort of competition between Joshua and Riggs in Vietnam.
George, that's Mr. Joshua.
Sorry, Mr. Joshua. And yes, I say it had that very over-the-top ending. So in terms of directors that came on board, so you had this hot script, came to the attention of Joel Silver. Joel Silver's first choice, interestingly, was Sir Ridley Scott.
Sir Ridley Scott League.
Sir Ridley Scott of South Shields. And he was the first choice. However, as this was the script was owned by Warner Brothers.
Where were we in Ridley Scott's career?
Ridley Scott. So this
done Alien.
You know, so this is the reason that Ridley Scott didn't get the job is because he'd worked on Blade Runner with Warner Brothers, and due to tensions, it was a very tortuous shoot. It was a very long shoot, but as we all agree, it's a brilliant film. But Warner Brothers weren't too keen to work with Ridley Scott again.
It's kind of like, we'll probably talk about this at some point in this episode, director's cuts of films. Whenever you see a director's cut of a film, basically between the lines is there was a falling out. The studio changed the director's vision too much. That's true of Blade Runner, and it's even true of one of Richard Donner's later films, which we'll get to.
Yeah, of course.
Keep talking about Sir Edders. Sorry to...
I mean, there is, just on that point, there's me getting a little bit sidetracked, but there's a fantastic making of documentary on the Blade Runner saga. I think it's called something like Perchance to Dream, maybe? Or it's basically a 3-hour documentary all about the trials and tribulations of Blade Runner. But yeah, check that out if you can. So yeah, Warner Brothers didn't want Ridley Scott because he was a pain in the ass to work with, apparently. So the next name that came up in the mix was Leonard Nimoy.
What, you mean Spock? Mr. Spock?
Dr. Spock? Mr. Spock. Sorry, Mr. Spock, not Dr. Scott.
What is actually more surprising is that he was considered, is that I only found out today, listeners, that Leonard Nimoy directed 3 Men and a Baby.
So, yes.
Who knew?
So, Leonard Nimoy, Mr. Spock.
Which also came out in 1987. He wasn't available, was he?
He basically turned this down to make 3 Men and a Baby because he had directed a couple of the Star Trek films at that point, and he said in his defense, he said he wasn't comfortable doing a hardcore action film. He wanted to do a comedy. So yes, he did one of the bigger grossing films that year?
Yeah, gross more. Yeah.
So there you go. Yeah, Mr. Spock, Leonard Nimoy himself almost directed Lethal Weapon. So it eventually came to Richard Donner. And again, we've talked about Richard Donner in the past. He of The Omen, Superman 1 and 2, and that's what you were talking about in terms of director's cut.
Absolutely, yeah. Which, when we cover Superman 2, we will be covering the Richard Donner cut, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, definitely.
Or the Donner kebab, as George likes to call it.
The Donner kebab. Well, that's I refer to the Donner kebab because he's had such a varied film career. And if you said to someone that wasn't a film fan, the same guy directed
The Goonies,
Superman the movie, and Lethal Weapon, they would say, get the fuck out of here. So yeah, he has a very varied, eclectic film selection. And so yeah, he came on board, and he admits, whilst we sort of talk about, Shane Black being a wonder kid, Richard Donner is quite frank in saying no matter how many drafts Shane Black did, it was still too dark for his liking. So he brought on Jeffrey Boehm,
That sounds familiar.
Who we talked about in Lost Boys. So he came and did the redrafts when Joel Schumacher came on board to make Lost Boys more sexy teen friendly. Sexy teen friendly. So Jeffrey Boehm came on board and he lightened it up. He made it a little bit less violent.
A bit more sexy. A little bit more Spanish guitar.
Yeah, a little bit more. I don't think he had involvement with the music, Charlie, but never mind. Murtaugh walks on screen. Saxophone.
Release saxophone.
And Boehm was also brought back. So Shane Black also had first dibs on the Lethal Weapon 2 script, and he wrote that with Warren Murphy. But again, Jeffrey Boehm came on board and lightened it up Shane Black's script was just too dark. And in Shane Black's script, he was going to kill off Riggs in Lethal Weapon 2.
Shoot him, Sam. He dies in the end. That was basically Black's pitch.
Skip to the end, he dies.
He dies in the end. The bad guy with a gun kills him.
So yeah, that is the sort of the whole script genesis. As we've said, I don't know if it's worth talking about Shane Black's obsession with Christmas.
I was going to say that because I think I read some interview or something, or maybe you told me about him saying it's a great time to set movies, and I was like, Iron Man 3, it was another film. It came out, March, April time, set at Christmas.
Yeah.
I haven't got a problem with it being set at Christmas. I've got a problem with a Christmas film coming out in the middle of the year.
Yes, it's very
and
weird.
Also California, where you can't tell it's Christmas. It's not postcard Christmas.
It's not
snow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird to... It's like when they play like a Friends or a Simpsons episode.
When we watch Neighbours when we were younger. You know the Australian soap? When's it ever... It's Christmas. It's like, how are we supposed to tell?
Never snows in Australia, mate.
Exactly.
So yeah, he definitely has a... Shane Black is one of his sort of calling cards. I don't know if you would call it that. But yeah, he essentially says, Christmas, it is a time it brings people together. It's a time where people are reflective and it's fun. It's so yes, Lethal Weapon set at Christmas.
Did he have anything to do with Die Hard?
No, he did not have.
Joel Silver.
Joel Silver did. I think is Last Boy Scout set at Christmas.
Yep.
Long Kiss Goodnight obviously is. Iron Man 3, as you've touched on, and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Well, there you go.
So yeah, that's production stuff. Shall we move on to casting?
I think this is going to be interesting. So yeah, let's do casting, and then we'll do
because we're going
to
talk about casting, but obviously, calm down, dear listeners. I'm not going to go into coulda, woulda, shoulda. There are some good coulda, woulda, shoulda, but we'll leave that till the end. But again, some more crossover. So the casting director for this was Marion Doherty, who we've talked about last episode, did Lost Boys, but she also did
Spotting Talent.
Also did casting for Batman. So I think she must be in the employ of Warner Brothers. And she was the first person that suggested teaming up Mel Gibson with Danny Glover. So whilst there was several people considered for both roles, I think Mel Gibson was really hot then. And
what, you mean in property or attraction?
Both ways, dangerously hot. And that's even before his hairstyle was created.
Yeah.
So, but importantly, in Black's script, Murtaugh there was no set ethnicity in the script. So when Doherty suggested to Donna, what about Danny Glover? He was like, but he's black.
Because it's the 80s, they were saying things like, but he's black.
And Donna, admits, he said, I thought, consider myself being really liberal and forward thinking. So I sort of gave myself a bit of a kicking because it was, I felt stupid because it was such a brilliant idea.
Exactly. Why not?
So they got those two guys together. They did a script read through, and Donna said it was just seeing them do the script together. It was just magic. They found a relationship. They had that chemistry. They had the emotion. They had the laughs where you just didn't think it was possible. And it was just movie magic.
It doesn't surprise me, but it's good to hear that they just gelled, because that's carried through. And I think that's what they built the franchise off. It's like people want to see and I think not just Christmas, but I'd say Shane Black's calling card is the buddy cop film. Not just the buddy cop film, but all of his films is about the buddy relationship. It's not.
Well, that's it. It's that banter, and it's a funny one when you hear that Jeffrey Boehm came in to lighten it up, because Black's trademark thing is that pitter-patter, that back and forth, that sharp, biting dialogue. It's almost like hard-boiled, film noir type dialogue. And there are some key lines in this throughout, and that's what he's kind of made his thing. It's his dialogue. It's almost Tarantino-esque in a way, before Tarantino.
Because I think you and I both love both The Nice Guys and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang for that. The back and forth in that, both between Val Kilmer and RGJ, and then with who's it? It's
Gosling and Russell Crowe.
On a complete tangent, sorry, because we've said his name, Ryan Gosling. I've worked out who he is. He is a reincarnation of Gene Wilder.
Oh, really? Interesting.
I think he could redo a lot of Gene Wilder's films. That's for another podcast.
Okay,
sorry, we'll cut it out.
But yeah, you could argue. I mean, it's not really much of an argument, but Black revitalized that 80s buddy cop comedy came from Lethal Weapon. I mean, it's been sort of attempted several times since.
So were those two tropes going on in the 80s, wasn't it? It was the one-man army and the buddy cops. And those are the two things.
And I think when you think of buddy cops, Lethal Weapon is the first thing that comes to mind in terms of that mismatched odd couple thing.
Yeah.
And as you say, it's their relationship. It's Riggs and Murtaugh's relationships that is key, that makes this film step out of its genre tropes and create something, creates a franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I like about all of the films with them in is that they don't seem to be trying too hard. It does seem to come naturally to them.
Yeah.
And Danny Glover even popped up in Maverick.
Yes.
That brilliant cameo.
Before the whole notion of shared universes, it's a lovely tick of, when he makes a cameo in Maverick and they play the Spanish guitar.
They play the Spanish guitar. He's a bank robber and he comes out...
Or is it the saxophone? It might be the saxophone.
It's definitely... I'm not sure. I can't tell the difference. And he does come out with his tagline of...
Interestingly, both stars were playing older than their actual age. So Gibson was 30, but his role is supposed to be around 38. Murtaugh, as we know, is celebrating his 50th birthday.
I thought he looked... I was like, he looks... I think that was...
Well, Danny Glover's always looked old. He's a bit like Gene Hackman. He hasn't aged terribly, but he's always looked old in my eyes.
Yeah, I think that's because obviously when you discovered him, but I think...
he was 40 when he did this.
Well, I don't know if you relate to it, but I was definitely thinking that, watching this, thinking, wow, obviously with us both being parents now, it's just thinking we were looking at the Bang Bang catch the bad guys now, but this thing, we'll get to it later, but this thing about his kids being threatened and then looking at him going, so how old is he meant to be? He's meant to be 50. I was like, he looks good.
He looks good.
He looks
really good.
He wasn't 50.
And obviously for every hero you need a good villain, and as you say, Mr. Joshua.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mendez.
Yeah, how you doing?
Would you pat him down, Mr. Larch?
Oh, hey, man, we went through this act already.
Go through it again.
Who are you?
That's hardly important, but if it matters, you may call me Mr. Joshua. Let's go.
Release Gary Busey.
Release Crazy Busey. So we've talked about Busey on Point Break, but at this time he was in a bit of a career funk, and he claims this is the role that sort of picked his career up. And he said he never played a bad guy before this, and he'd been out of shape, so he lost loads of weight and even dyed his hair like that, electric blonde.
So Gary Busey's been in other films other than Point Break in this.
Under Siege.
Of course. How can one forget?
No, but I think he did it. It was a big surfing film. Was it Big Wednesday? He did in the 70s, and he did the Buddy Holly story.
Of course.
But yeah, I think this was the role that made him rent a bad guy.
Right.
And they said that they wanted a sort of formidable foe for Mel Gibson, and they thought that in terms of, because he's quite a big guy and he's quite imposing. The man's obviously crazy.
Well, I thought the rest of the cast, I didn't know them. They kind of had fair play to them. There's obviously
the rest of the cast of Die Hard.
Yeah, I was going to say there's Kim Young, who's the famous...
Al Young.
Al Young, who actually has lines.
You've got the police psychiatrist, Mary Ellen something.
Agent Johnson.
Grandel Bush.
Yeah.
The angry police captain, I can't remember his name, but he's also the angry police captain in Joel Silver production, Demolition Man.
I was going to say, he's the guy who's doing walking exposition with Stallone.
God damn it, you're a goddamn Demolition Man.
Yeah, he even says the movie title. Do you want to talk about first memories?
Ganon.
So, yeah, I mean, this was just VHS what for us, wasn't it?
Through and through.
It was like probably missed the start, and I think that goes. I think we go from first memories, and we'll
probably some really bad dubbing from ITV, some bad editing.
Definitely some like editing,
bonehead,
which is like why I can't remember the start of this film, which we'll get to in a moment, and that was probably from the VHS recording. But I think the one thing that we'll try and get out of the way now is that when I watch this film now, because one of George and I's favourite comedies, which is up there with Top Secret and Airplane,
but probably not as well loved.
Probably not as well loved as Top Secret or Airplane 1 and 2, is a film called Loaded Weapon 1, featuring Emilio Estevez and Samuel L. Jackson, Whoopi Goldberg, William Shatner. So it's
Tim Curry.
Tim Curry. If you like comedies that parody certain films, then
it's I think it's one of the lesser seen spoof films. Obviously, everyone's seen Airplane, Naked Gun, Hot Shots, but this is probably lesser seen. But it's a lot of fun, and especially if you enjoy the Lethal Weapon series. Obviously, it's one of its main targets, but it's a piss take of a lot of the Hollywood action films around the time.
Tim Curry doing an impression of Arnie at some point in it, but I think
you've got William Shatner just being insane brilliantly. Samuel L. Jackson,
Basic Instinct as well.
Basic Instinct. You got Samuel L. Jackson and Emilio Estevez are very, very good in it.
But I think one of the reasons I bring it up is, one, I can't stop thinking about it when I watch Lethal Weapon now. And second of all, I think the reason we enjoyed Loaded Weapon 1 so much was because of how much love we had for the Lethal Weapon franchise.
Yeah.
I think it allowed us to go back and revisit. And to be fair to Loaded Weapon, they do get some of the parodies spot on.
Yeah.
Like the whole shoot him, I'm not crazy, I'll shoot you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
There's the whole, there's the gag from Lethal Weapon 2 where it's not the main character, but he's trying to escape out the straitjacket, and he's like, come on, Foley, give it up. How long has he been doing it for? 2 weeks.
Yeah, he's trying to get out of the straitjacket. But there's also the, come on, Riggs, come back and see how a functional family lives. Don't go back to your, So it's very much on the nose, but it's that's what I think of when I start watching this film. But I don't know if you ever have any first memories, but I can't remember the suicide at the beginning, and I blame some TV recording
scheduling. Yeah. No, you and I were chatting about this earlier, and again, I don't know if it's a bit like the Rambo First Blood Part 2 thing. There's sort of the memories of Lethal Weapon and Lethal Weapon 2 kind of merged together for me, but I remember we definitely watched the second one a lot more, and I don't know if that's because it's more action, more jokes.
It was more new, it was more recent. I think that's what it comes down to. Is obviously there's the same argument for like you talk about the original's always the best, like we talked about Rambo recently, and we've said it obviously with The Matrix, Indiana Jones. There are some originals which are clearly the best, but there are others where, for me, I think it's probably about the age and about how recent it was, but I always have a lot more love for the second one than I do the first. I get the feeling that the first leaves you wanting to see more of this franchise, more of this partnership, and I feel like the second one gives you everything that you want to see.
And then, I say, we're not really going to spend too much time on sequels, but then, we've talked about...
Oh, no, that deserves its own episode.
But it also, the franchise tips over. It leans more on the comedy as the series goes on. And I remember you and I going to see the fourth one with Jet Li.
It's where Jet Li kicks his slippers at people.
Which I've done before. It's quite a good defense mechanism.
It gives you a few seconds before you've got to go to a harder weapon.
But it's not a terrible film if we look at other sort of franchises with belated, fourth installments, Indiana Jones, that sort of thing. It's not terrible, but it's can't
remember much of it apart from him having a laser dot on his gun.
Yeah, no, you've got, obviously they introduced Chris Rock. You've got Joe Pesci really ramping up the annoying Joe Pesci-ness. And it's just too much. They are dialing up.
There's too many characters.
There's too many characters. There's too
Rene
much.
Russo's in it again.
Yeah, well, that's it. And I think...
Continue that storyline.
Again, the third one, we had a lot of fun. I remember growing up enjoying that as a family, which is quite odd, watching it, because... Yeah, I remember... our sister Sophia had a big crush on Mel Gibson. I think Mum did as well. I mean, he was kind of dreamy back then, And I think the thing that annoyed me most about the fourth one was Mel Gibson getting rid of the mullet.
I think if you put all of the movie posters like next to each other and you just do a progression over the years, you'll see the mullet just sort of shrinking, and then it's just removed. There's like not even a mini early 90s type mullet. You know, like we're not sure, is that a mullet or is it shoulder hair?
Yeah, it just took me out of the whole equation.
Yeah, just couldn't connect with him.
Just didn't find it realistic anymore.
It wasn't enough wish fulfillment. So let's jump into the film, George. So
you've talked about the opening.
Well, just I completely forgot about it.
But how do we know it's a Christmas movie?
Is it because everyone's doing coke? No.
Well,
there's snow.
I was gonna say it opens with Jingle Bell Rock, but you know, whatever. You know,
that is kind of hitting it hard. But no, I was asking myself, did they cut this scene massively because there's a bit too much nipple?
It's typical 80s tropes. You've got boobs, completely, you know,
unnecessary boobs.
Yeah, boobs, coke.
Yeah,
Christmas music. I'm sure I've heard those sleigh bells somewhere before.
Oh, is that
those sinister sleigh bells? It's Michael Kamen on the score, the same man that did Die Hard.
I've made a note of that, saying it's very
Roadhouse.
Die Hard. Okay.
License to Kill.
I thought you were going to say License to Drive.
Possibly License to Drive. But yeah, it's quite a... It's obviously a dramatic opening.
You don't know where you're going with this film. It's not. It takes a while before you realise what type of film it's going to be.
And that whole suicide. It's not
dreamy, dream sequency.
But it's quite a slow reveal of why it's happened, isn't it? It doesn't.
Well, you don't know. It looks like it's made to look. It's, as I say, the film unfolds before your eyes. Is that at the beginning it's positioned and it's shot to look like a suicide, and it's later on you're told in the narrative that it wasn't, but you're seeing it through the eyes of the camera, and it's the same with
deceiving you.
Yes, it's stringing you along. But that's what I mean. I think what's interesting in a lot of action films, or this would be called, I guess, an action thriller. Yeah, it does keep you guessing for at least throughout. And obviously we've watched this film many, many times. We know where it's going. We know what's going to happen. But the first time, you'd be like, there's a lot of stakes.
Yeah.
Like, where's it going? What's happening?
So then we get to, we're introduced to our characters. I can't remember, who do we get first? Do we get Murtaugh with his family? Yeah, we get the whole sort of...
Well, Murtaugh's called to the case.
No, but Murtaugh's, he's celebrating his birthday. He's in the bath.
Yeah.
I love my family, you know. Family,
so much to lose.
Family banter, looking a bit old, get rid of the beard.
Yeah.
And then in contrast, we've got Riggs, you know, burnt out loser in his trailer.
Completely cray-cray, just not cray-cray.
Cray-cray in the buff as well. Obligatory butt in the moonlight.
Unnecessary, obligatory butt in the moonlight walk. Yeah, so he is completely crazy, just not crazy enough to shoot himself.
But we haven't got to that yet.
Oh, sorry.
We haven't got to that yet. So, but what I've noticed is that Riggs and Murtaugh have their own musical jingles.
Sort of like Star Wars.
Sort of like Star Wars, but I mean, they've
got their own theme music.
We've touched on it in our last episode, our love, or mainly my love, of saxophone.
More sax.
But there's a lot of sax in this, and it seems to be Murtaugh's theme, is it?
Yeah, no, because he's got the sax. It's sort of like yin and yang, salt and pepper. So he's got the saxophone, and Riggs has got the Spanish guitar.
Which was performed by none other than Eric Clapton.
I thought you were going to say Sting. But yeah,
no. I mean, I'd love to tell you that the saxophone was by our man, Tim Capello, who
Let's just say it was.
Sexy Sax on Lost Boys, but it wasn't.
How do you know it wasn't?
I've looked it up. It was a guy called David Sanborn. But yes, the guitar, the Lethal Weapon, you know, sort of guitar part was, performed by none other than Eric Clapton.
I remember seeing that in the credit. That's actually mentioned in the opening credits.
Yes, it is. But then we get to, again, I think sometimes Riggs has several introduction scenes. So we've got the sort of loner, but we've got the Christmas tree scene, which is a good scene.
Undercover Cop. Which is reminiscent of Beverly Hills Cop as well.
Yes, the opening of that.
Similar to that, because Beverly Hills Cop 2 came out the same year as this. Right. And was the highest grossing film of this year.
So yeah, you've got, you know, I've got a question though. Is Mel Gibson's character supposed to be crazy in this? I'm not entirely sure.
I'm not sure. Is it referred to? Drinking game for this film is the word crazy. Shoot me, do it, shoot him.
He's a man with nothing to lose. He's a loose cannon. He's, everything. So there's one of the guys, one of the drug dealers in that scene, there's a guy wearing the black and red check shirt, the guy that's holding Mel Gibson hostage.
Familiar?
He is Blackie Dammit, real name John Kiedis, father of Anthony Kiedis of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So yeah, there's some random trivia for you there. But that's all I've got for that scene. But yeah, I think it's...
It is, but Beverly Hills Cop starts with him taking down some truck of stolen goods.
Yes, it does, but it doesn't have him, shoot me, go on, do it. Shows how much of a maverick renegade Riggs really is.
There's a lot of exposition about how cray-cray he is. It's like...
There's too much exposition.
Actually, well, if you think, like, how many times is it discussed? He talks about it. He talks about it to the criminals at the start.
Yeah.
Then we have the captain and the psychologist talking about how he's crazy.
Yeah.
Then we have Murtaugh telling him that he's crazy. Then you have Riggs saying... I'm actually crazy.
I'm not crazy. And then, you really are crazy.
And then at the end he says, I'm not actually crazy. I just want people to think I'm crazy. So it is like it's his character arc.
Yes. But you do have that. We've talked about the attempted suicide scene. And I think that is, Mel Gibson gets a lot of shit. Like more so...
Say whatever you want, sugar tits.
Yeah, more so because of his recent behaviour in the past sort of 10, 20 years. But he was, and it showed that why he was a man in demand. He's a brilliant actor. And that's...
Got presence.
And that scene shows it. That attempted suicide scene is phenomenal acting where he's got the gun against his head. It's great tension. It's great music. And apparently they filmed it in 2 takes, but... Gibson kept saying he wanted to film it at a certain time. He kept saying he wasn't ready to do it yet. So I think they filmed it towards the end of production.
This is the opening scene.
Well, the bit where he's got the gun against his head.
Yeah.
So I think that's after the...
Oh, you mean more like when he's by himself?
Yeah, he's loading the gun. He's got the...
I get the feeling, maybe I remember this differently, but he does that a lot. Isn't that part of his character thing? He's like, I keep saying I'm going to do it, but he doesn't do it. Because he's got a bullet that he's... I don't know what the technical term is. It escapes me at the moment, but where they cut it, and so it's...
to a hollow point.
Yeah, so it'll blow the back of his head out, so he'll do a proper job. But so he's been deliberating it for some time.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it kind of... I think this film, in contrast to when we're talking about First Blood, was obviously about the traumas and the horror of Vietnam and how America dealt with it. I think apart from this... suicide scene, it kind of glamorizes the whole film glamorizes Vietnam.
It's more that if you've been in Nam, then you've got...
You're a hard ass.
You've got special forces, you've got special weapons training, and people owe you stuff. You save people's lives and stuff like that.
And that's what makes you a goddamn hero.
And that's why you're a policeman, because I just hate crime.
So we do get the scene where Riggs and Murtaugh meet, and there's that brilliant line from Murtaugh's colleague where 80s men cry and share their feelings and shit.
Yeah. Last night I cried just by myself. Okay.
And yes, as we've said, you've got some diehard alumni there. So we've got Grandel Bush, the very brilliantly named Grandel Bush, who obviously would go on to play one of the Agent Johnsons in Die Hard, and Mary Ellen Trainor, who is the police psychologist.
The man is suicidal.
Yeah, the man is suicidal. He shouldn't be put on the pay. He shouldn't be in a job. But yeah, some brilliant exposition from her, and there's even some more glorious exposition in the car park with Danny Glover going, "I pulled your file."
I just love it when they do that in films.
Nam, martial arts, jiu-jitsu.
It's not the only time that it's said in this film.
What, pulling a file?
No, because Mr. Joshua says it again, "I pulled his file."
But
where are all these files?
Where are they pulling these files from?
But it's also it's in so many films from this era of mid to early 90s, and it's either "I pulled his file" or "I pulled his jacket."
Yeah.
That's another slang.
And there's some lovely gun comparing in the car park scene.
What do you got? Got yourself a coat.
And it was such an 80s thing. It's sort of like, yeah, what you got there? Oh, Beretta. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You got yourself a reliable 6-shooter. Guns.
And he says the title, doesn't he? I suppose we should register some kind of a lethal weapon.
Yeah. Buzzword.
Not crazy. Lethal weapon.
And the captain is sitting in the background going, I remember when I used to announce the movie title.
But there is there's some great dialogue. I say like one line that stuck out for me when like Danny Glover's getting really pissed off and he's like, God hates me, and Gibson goes, hate him back, works for me.
Yeah, and he's blowing smoke out like a giant. It's like Riggs is just dying inside.
But we've obviously introduced the heroes. We need to introduce Mr. Joshua,
the villains.
You want to see tough? I'll show you tough. How tough is Mr. Joshua?
Well, he's wearing a fake arm, that's for one thing.
or the flame is just behind his arm.
It's some really funny camera
and
work.
some very intense staring at the camera.
Yeah.
I mean...
and some good sound work.
And Boosie does, some good crazy because... He is crazy.
He is actually clinically insane.
He is
in real life.
mental.
Self-confessed.
But he's brilliant in this. He's
brilliant in everything. He's Gary Busey for
That's true. But he does a very good bad guy.
Yeah. Menacing. It's not a side to him that you see enough of.
Yeah. Very intense. And so we are, there's also a nice bit of self-promotion. We have when Riggs and Murtaugh are getting a hot dog on the cinema in the background. The Lost Boys, this year's hit.
Oh, I did not. Did I notice that? No, but there is a few other self-referencing things.
There's a Lethal Weapon poster on the wall. No, you're thinking of Demolition Man.
No, I'm not talking about that. No.
Hey, we're on the wall.
When are we going to get to the bit where... you said I pulled your file. Well, when he finds out about Mr. Joshua, he was working for the CIA for Air America.
Yes, which
I'm guessing was a Joel Silver production featuring Mel Gibson, because he made the film.
But that hadn't happened yet.
No, it came later. I
think it's just because it's a great story, the whole Air America.
Yeah, I can't remember story. I think I've seen it.
Storyline. Is that Downey Jr.?
No,
is that his partner?
Maybe.
We're
not doing Air America. Calm the fuck down.
Okay.
So
pull the Air America file.
All roads lead to Nam.
Lots of to go back to another Gary Busey, tell Nam stories.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Nam references. It's the one thing that links them, because he's heard of Joshua and he's heard of Riggs, because they were kind of legends in Vietnam.
Of Nam.
And that's why Murtaugh Michael Hunsaker.
I think we're getting into a suspicious spin-offs territory here. Are we skip past the jumper scene?
No, we've just got up to it. You're crazy, man. You're crazy.
Yeah, we don't know why that guy's jumping. Is it?
I kept thinking it was Robert Davi.
Yeah, I thought, is he going to die? Yeah,
the other Agent Johnson, but he wouldn't be so pathetic, because Robert Davi only has one thing, and that's smooth.
There's only two things you notice from this jumper scene, and one is, which I'm guessing is for health and safety. The first is they're not handcuffed when they jump, because he handcuffs him.
Are they just holding hands?
And then when they jump, they're not even holding hands. So the first thing, maybe they're holding hands. So the first thing you notice is, one, they're not handcuffed, and two, that's not Mel Gibson. Once again,
were you watching it in HD?
Yeah, maybe for health and safety. They weren't allowed to be handcuffed.
But the thing I was thinking,
no mullets were put at risk.
Is like, we've seen this so many times, but imagine watching that for the first time, because the whole reveal with them jumping and landing on the inflatable thing is a complete surprise.
Yeah, you don't know it's there.
But you've seen it so many times, like, oh yeah, now they're going to do the jump. And
I think there's a lot about this film. I was saying before, there's the slow reveal of where it's going. Like, he arrives on the site, everyone thinks it's a suicide. It comes out later that it's not a suicide, that it's part of a drug ring. And then, as you say, there's a lot. I think not really the benefit of hindsight, but you forget, the effect this film would have had the first time. Because I think the second film had an impact on me in that I thought it was quite dark.
Your fear of South Africans.
Yeah, and knowing what I could get away with. All I had to do was become an ambassador of a country, and I could basically start my own drug ring and kill people. No, but yeah, I just remember that as being. It's funny. They are much darker, the first two films, but yeah, I think this is why it became the franchise. It was a very good action thriller, a very good cop story.
Yeah, and there's certain things that make it feel very Lethal Weapon-y. I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like there's that jeopardy, there's that whilst there is like moments of mindless violence, it always seems with Riggs and Murtaugh there is a consequence of the people that they're killing. It's sort of like they're trying not to, because they are cops. They're not just action heroes that will blow anyone away.
I do it for the job.
I just hate crime.
It is almost like that. They are kind of just like out and out cops.
So Mel's jumped with the jumper, and so we have some more Murtaugh testing. You really are crazy. Go do it. Pull the trigger. Take my gun. Shoot him. Shoot yourself. Shoot him.
Yeah, there's a lot of cray-cray talk.
No. Put it under the chin. Might miss. So yes, more.
I guess you call it they're forming their relationship.
Yeah, but they do have some great banter. And I say we've touched on the fact that is the strength of the franchise, is that they're back and forth. The whole I was going to say that pool scene where they go to like try and arrest the guy, and he shoots him and falls into the pool, and they're trying to save him, but he's wrapped up in the sheeting and stuff. That feels very sort of
Lethal Weapon.
I don't know how to explain it, but it is
maybe
like
it's the camera work.
Yeah, and the music. The music is very
dun.
It's very
Die Hard kind of as well.
Very Die Hard, very Roadhousey as well. But then we get to get some more time at home with the Murtaughs.
Come and see how a normal family lives.
The warmth and love of a real family.
Don't you hit on my daughter.
But yes, you've got some great time with the family. The fact that the daughter's obsessed with Riggs. There's the one line that stuck out for me. She's being grounded for smoking pot, but she goes, "It's not coke, you know."
Yeah, exactly. Coke's bad. Pot's okay.
Coke's bad. There's also some foreshadowing for Lethal Weapon 2. There's a sticker on the fridge in the Murtaugh's kitchen about apartheid.
Is there?
Yes. Oh. And apparently Donna got lots of death threats and aggressive mail about that, because he is openly against apartheid at the time. And he's like, well, screw you guys, I'm going to make it a key theme of the second film.
Okay, so there's a lot of people not happy about this. Gonna milk it.
Milk it. And we get some more Nam stories from Riggs, him being an amazing sniper. Whoa, it's fantastic.
So I don't know, 10 guys in the world could have made that shot. Guns.
So, Roger's on his boat, is it his retirement boat? I don't know.
It's not in the water.
Just makes him more of a family man. Yeah. Riggs goes home, family asleep. Roger puts on some porn, but it's for research.
Research, yeah. Research. I thought it was a very... Darling, what are you doing? It's for work.
It's for work, baby. Why is that saxophone playing as well? Soundtrack, baby.
Yeah, so he's forced to watch some amateur porn for the case. And does he crack the case from watching the porn?
I think so. Hunsaker. Oh, but before we get to the Hunsaker funeral, whose funeral is it? Yours. We get what I've put down as a classic 80s trope. We've got to go to a gun range. How many 80s films feature a gun range? So we've obviously done 87, a RoboCop.
Yeah, gun range.
Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Check.
Is there one in Red Heat, maybe?
Yep. Because you've got that enormous gun.
Yeah.
It's a
you just don't Desert Eagle?
Desert Eagle, yeah.
You don't get enough scenes in gun ranges these days.
I think that's what's missing.
But yeah, something for me just screamed out, like, why? The 80s really loved a gun range.
Well, they were trying to sell lots of guns. But again, now everyone has guns.
But how do we make it
sexy?
How do we make it sexy? Now, how do we reinforce? We've said that Riggs is a really good shot.
Crack shot.
Well, how do we amplify it? We do it with it. I mean, it is a great little little bit. It's a scene where he's like keeps pushing it further and further away, and
oh no, it's.
And I've noticed they've actually made that the DVD case or slip cover on some of the scenes is that the target with the smiley face.
I think what's good about that is you see the two sides of the cops. You got the old you got Danny Glover's character. He's got his
Dirty Harry, his Magnum.
Yeah, he's got a shot, and he gets to have his moment showing that off. But then you got Riggs, who's the these fly boys,
young buck.
Yeah, who's obviously talented, and they are a lethal weapon. Is he the lethal weapon? Can we talk about the title, because they do say it in the film. So is it that Riggs is the lethal weapon, or I like to think,
or is it his Beretta is the lethal weapon? No, it's Riggs. It's Riggs.
No.
Is it his mullet?
I'll get to that. I'd like to think romantically that it's the pair of them together are a lethal weapon. But then they didn't call the sequel Lethal Weapons, so
missed out a trick there.
Yeah,
or lethal weaponing.
Or lethally weaponed. No, that doesn't work.
No. Anyway, so we get some more brilliant exposition. So we're at the Hunsaker funeral. So that the girl that committed suicide, I'm doing air quotes. I'm not doing air quotes, but it's her funeral.
Laura.
And they've decided that's perfect time to grill Michael Hunsaker about his involvement with this whole drug operation, Shadow Company.
Yeah, it's very strange. Yeah, because they are.
It's a very strange scene because it's a beachside funeral. I think it's a funeral, but he's sort of oh, come inside. I'll tell you the whole thing. What has the funeral happened, or?
I think maybe I'd like to think everyone's waiting.
They're waiting on it. Hang on, I've just got to make my confession.
And then I've got to get shot by a guy in a helicopter.
Where does that helicopter come from? Because is Riggs outside, or is it?
Riggs is smoking outside. Smoking is bad. You'll get killed by an assassin in a helicopter.
But it's just Mr. Joshua pops up.
Hello.
And just as he's made sure that he's told them everything. Yeah. And Mr. Joshua knows he's told them everything.
So it's on the coast of, and I'm sure it features. I just feel like I've seen this
it's probably
coastline.
Iconic.
I think it is an iconic place because it's popped up in. I think it's like used as a retreat at the very end of Mad Men. Like where he goes to that retreat, and it's also featured in Dead to Me, which is more recently on Netflix, which I very much enjoyed that.
Someone else recommended that to me.
Oh no, it's brilliant. I highly recommend that. Very, very interesting, and that starts with what I guess is a dealing with lost loved ones, and that shot, and it looks like the same place. Yeah. So I guess we're reaching
kind of a big deal.
It's probably a really famous cemetery in California that we're just not aware of.
So Shadow Company is the NAM outfit that
not suspicious. We're just going to call it Shadow Company.
Shadow Company, and it starts sort of shipping guns, and then it becomes contraband and drugs.
I think all roads lead to NAM.
NAM and drugs, because it's the 80s. Yeah. But interestingly, Shadow Company, the name is the title of Shane Black's first script, which is an action zombie horror movie about a group of dead US special forces. Always special forces.
It's a buddy film. It's a zombie buddy film.
It sounds a bit like Universal Soldier. So it's about a special forces soldiers who died during Vietnam. Years later, their bodies are brought back, and they come back as unstoppable zombies.
Does sound a lot like Universal Soldier.
But at one point, apparently, it was almost made into a film by John Carpenter, starring
Kurt Russell.
Yes,
that would have been more mullets.
But it never got made, sadly. So yes, that's a bit of sort of inline trivia there. That was the first script that got him noticed, and then got him the writing gig for Lethal Weapon. Back to the funeral. So Hunsaker's been killed.
Before divulging all the crucial information, he's been popped off.
Plan B. Through the carton of eggnog. Christmas.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to, we're basically at the kidnapping scene. They got my daughter. I was talking about stakes at the beginning. It's like, what could possibly go wrong with this beautiful family of Roger Murtaugh?
Beautiful, beautiful family. And yeah, it's quite a compact sort of final act. I've sort of been trying to split out, what's first act, what's second act, but this, pretty much from that whole Hudsaka funeral assassination type thing, it's then all sort of pretty much all guns blazing.
Well, yeah, I would say, looking back, obviously, because we both watched this film separately, so in different cities. I was in France, George was obviously in the UK.
Somewhere in the UK.
So I have no idea where he was.
Possibly on a train.
But thanks to the beauty of WhatsApp, we watched this at the same time, didn't we?
We did. I think I was about half an hour ahead of you. I was just like, oh my God, so much sax. You're like, I'm watching it as well.
It's too much guitar. Yeah, and I think I felt that watching it then, just recently, it was much more about their relationship. As I said before, it unfolds. You don't know what's going on with these two characters. It's like everyone, George was saying to me that the back of the DVD case for Lethal Weapon looks like it's been, what was it?
Written by a committee. It's really something else. It's puntastic.
And it's like mad. He's not a Mad Max. He's a crazy cop or something.
Yeah, it's like edge of your seat roller coaster ride.
Yeah, and it basically gives a backstory for everybody on the back of the DVD case. But I think rather than what that DVD case does, the film is much more subtle. So I think it's more like you discover, they establish their relationship, they establish their characters, what are they good at, they establish the bad guys, and then, as you say, so it's one of those films where it feels like it may be a very short act one, a baggy act, and then maybe baggy act two, then a very fast.
I wouldn't say the
not
second
baggy,
act's
but you know what I
baggy.
mean. But longer.
Yeah, I mean it's sort of them.
Meatier.
It's them. It's being detectives. It's them working the case essentially. But it is a very lean film. I mean, I think it is. Even though it's a 2-hour job, isn't it? It's always just shy of.
Yeah. It's an hour 50.
But yeah, as I say, this final bit, you've got obviously his daughter's been kidnapped. You've got the bit where they think they've killed Riggs, and in classic 80s trope, back in the time when we thought a bulletproof vest could stop anything, he shot at close range with a shotgun.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's fine, I've got my bulletproof vest on.
There's no shrapnel goes in his face.
No, absolutely not.
And they shoot him in the chest.
What if he aimed for the head? Yeah, what if he did aim for the head? Sorry, I can't keep going back to that Dumb and Dumber quote. What if he shot you in the face? That was a chance we were willing to take. Sorry. But you've got, I love, again, it's that sort of, that what I'm calling Donna magic of that, the desert, the face off in the desert. You've got that cinematography of, the sweeping aerial shots. You've got the ramped up Michael Kamen score.
Just going nuts. He doesn't know it's not a time for saxophone. He's obviously got two paths, like, no, not my sax tapes.
No.
I've just got some guitar. I've got some extreme guitar. I've got evil jingle bells. No.
It's definitely not Die Hard, but it's close. And some brilliant editing as well.
I love that scene. Even now, going back, I can remember it being the highlight back then, and I was looking forward to watching it this time. I didn't know why, but I just think it's done very realistically. It's done, you've got him not wanting to take risk, but he's like, well, we can't deal with it because what are they going to do?
Yeah.
They're cops. They know what happens to a kidnappee. They know that this is not going to. There's no way that he's going to get his daughter back unless they take action.
But it's very high stakes because it's just like, oh yeah, we've got an ace up our sleeves because they think Riggs is dead, but there's loads of goons there, and I'm pretty sure I saw one of the goons, long-haired goons from Die Hard. I don't know if it's Marco or Tony, but it's one of them. Carl, or maybe Fritz. I don't know. But yeah, that quickly goes into, obviously they're outnumbered, outgunned.
Yeah, but Riggs takes out quite a few guys,
but he doesn't take out Mr. Joshua.
Yeah, it's not even a sniper rifle. Sorry, Charlie with his gun test. I play a lot of gun games.
Games.
It's a semi-automatic rifle, just with it's got a sniper sight on it, but
you know why? Because Riggs is good.
Yeah, Riggs is good.
Is that good?
I think it's called an FAL rifle for all you gun nuts out there.
Okay. Then we got the torture scene where we get our favourite henchman from Die Hard, Al Young, and also in Big Trouble in Little China, amongst other films.
Yeah. Gets a line, as we said earlier.
Gets a line. Mel says, "Who's the chin?" Mel showing his true colours. He would later reveal in real life.
Slightly racist.
That's not slander. That he was pulled up for being very racist. But the one thing in those scenes that really sort of shined was, we've talked about how brilliant Mel Gibson is as an actor, and he's a brilliant racist as well. We'll cut that out. But how good an actor Danny Glover is in those scenes where he's like begging for his life, he's begging for his daughter's life.
That really hits hard. Yeah.
Where he's basically it's like spit and dribble, like leave that daughter alone.
Yeah,
and it's it's really heartfelt, and it's you can see why he's a brilliant actor. And I speaking of which, the other week I revisited after a few years. I watched Predator 2, and
I wanted to talk about that when we were talking about him, because I think I was going to wait until we do it in Coulda Woulda Shoulda, because I can't see anybody else playing this role. And yeah, he's very thespian. He's got, but I can't. He's obviously Colour Purple. He's known for this.
But interestingly,
I just don't feel like he's done. But then there's Predator 2. I just don't feel like he's done enough, but he has done a lot.
Yeah, and he's now doing more sort of, I think, comedy films. So I see he's cropped up in the Jumanji sequel, and he obviously was in.
I did not know that.
He's in the Royal Tenenbaums.
Yes,
and he's a really lovely character in that. But yeah, very.
So maybe he has done enough.
No, but he's
not
very. I'd still say he's underrated.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, this is probably his biggest role.
Maybe he's just not gready. No, he's just happy. Maybe he's become Roger Murtaugh. He's got a family. So yeah, we've got the end. We've got. We think he's got. So the Riggs escapes.
Yeah,
and as a result,
and kills everyone in that club. That's when he goes a bit gun happy.
What do you mean, War of the Mullets? Have you not noticed that everyone in that?
Well, it's a rock club, isn't it?
It's a rock club, but the way I like to think of it is because obviously Mel's got his shirt open, he's just running around with an MP5 machine gun, and
that's because he's a loose cannon, Charlie. I don't know if anyone's tried to tell you, but the man's crazy.
Yeah, he's what a suicidal nut job. But the one thing you notice about that scene is that you've got it is I call it War of the Mullets, because everyone he kills has a much shittier mullet than Mel, and it's like only one mullet can survive. Just go back and watch it. They've also, it's an unfair fight when you look at the mullets.
So yeah, you've got Mel running very fast, and that's one of my sort of lasting sort of visual memories of
bare feet.
Yeah, Mel running down the street, sprinting with the gun, shirt open, as you say.
Yeah, and sexy,
sweaty Mel. And then you've got Murtaugh versus General McAllister doing his neck thing with the aiming that we still do to this day.
Yeah, just when I'm about to take a shot of something, normally tequila.
And then the General's card like tips over, and I just love that. No, my precious drugs and grenades.
Why did I leave them together?
Why did I put them together near the flammable? Oh no, boom. So what have you got? Anything to hide in the car? No, just drugs and grenades, officer.
Just opium, grenades, cocaine.
So yeah, Mr. Joshua brings the fight to home turf, and there's a great line. You want to shut up the title?
And it's, I don't know, just this, obviously we're talking about the scene at Roger Murtaugh's house where they've caught Mr. Joshua. He's been handcuffed.
They can take him away.
But something that is just, I don't know. It's
so 80s.
Is it 80s? Is it dramatic license? It's just, this would never happen. It's like, oh yeah, they're going to go for it. I mean,
this one's on me. I've authorized it.
I think
let them fight.
To be fair, I think this, I don't know about you, but this sort of rings true about, I think, what happens in a lot of, you hear about this happening in army scenarios where they let soldiers fight it out. Soldiers who've got a beef, they are allowed to have they stand off, they have a fight, and then people step in. But
he also
says,
80s. But he also says, this guy's just killed two of us. This guy's killed two of the cops, and you can almost imagine, cops are a bit
they
like
protect
that.
their own. Yeah, absolutely. And if they don't protect their own, then
he's killed a cop.
It's a cop. But yeah, and it's like, I think the Glover does all of the narrative that's required. It says, this is officially Martin Riggs' arrest. He's like,
I got this.
Nobody's like basically saying this is just a long drawn out arrest process. They're just having a tete-a-tete, a one-to-one, hand-to-hand combat
in the rain
with the siren, the car's upside down,
it looks amazing, and the helicopter illuminating the fight.
It looks amazing.
So yeah, apparently they I think they filmed this over 4 nights, and is a mix.
Several water sprinklers were
harmed in this making. And apparently there was a mix of 3 different martial arts styles. There was jiu-jitsu, capoeira, and a fighting style I'd never heard of before called Jailhouse Rock, which is a prison
You're
style.
making this up.
I am not making this up. This is
Prison rules.
Prison rules fighting, essentially.
Right.
I think it's like dirty fighting.
Is that like no hooking and no biting?
No hooking, no gouging.
No gouging.
But yeah, I love the bit, it's a bit I always remember where like he, throws him the nightstick and he's like defending himself against the, is it a lamppost? Is Mr. Joshua using a lamppost to beat
well, it's definitely not a parking meter, not in Roger Murtaugh's neighbourhood.
No, certainly not. But yeah, it's a very 80s stylized fight. Apparently they edited it down. It was originally in other cuts much longer, much more violent, but they've, pared it down a bit. So I think there is a few continuity issues in that scene, but it's a good fight, and obviously it just makes out that these two are badasses.
But it gives you everything you want to see. It's sort of like you want to see the hand-to-hand, the one-on-one, which we see at the end of Die Hard 2.
Maybe some swords. You could throw in some knives, sides. They put knives in the second one, maybe?
How'd they get that into the backstory? I'm not sure, but you get to see everything you want. So you get to see the fact that they catch him.
Yeah.
That they do the honourable thing.
But it's not enough justice.
They're not going to kill him. They're just going to have a fight, and then Riggs kicks his ass, and then he's going to go to jail. Oh no!
Oh, but wait, there's more.
And then it's that same shaky cam.
Hang on, guys. I've got an 80s cliche book here, and it says the bad guy that we're about to put away finds a hidden gun, just like Die Hard.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's something else we watched recently. It's like, oh no, he's not dead. Yeah, quick, shoot him. Shoot him in the stretcher. Yeah, there's a few films where the guy's shot when he's in the stretcher. Yeah. Kill him. Yeah, he's still alive, or he's got a gun. Fool's gonna do it.
And then, it's
happily ever after. You want to come over for Christmas dinner?
And then, no, I don't want to come over for Christmas dinner. I just came to give you the bullet that I was going to kill myself with. Oh, right. Are you sure you don't want to come for dinner? Oh, well, I was actually. I've even brought my dog.
You're saying we're friends and you've given me this bullet. It's kind of made it a bit weird. My wife says I shouldn't be spending time with you.
Do you want me to start threatening to kill myself with it? Is this if I ever want to shoot myself, you want me to use this bullet?
Do you want me to shoot you?
You weren't planning to come for dinner, but you've brought your dog with you. Nice.
So yes, and then paving the way for sequels we will cover in later episodes.
So George, that was Lethal Weapon 1987. I think it's time. I think we've got Jeff Goldblum wearing some gorgeous running gear that he's wearing these days, and Celine Dion. It's Coulda Woulda Shoulda.
Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should.
So, Coulda Woulda Shoulda. This is where we talk about alternative casting. Who was considered? Who could have got the role? Who
wanted a shot at the title?
Who should have got the role? Interestingly, and kind of sort of it makes sense being a Joel Silver production, but Bruce Willis was considered for the role of Riggs, but turned it down.
Not cray enough.
And Mel Gibson was offered the role of John McClane, but turned it down. But then they swapped.
Wow.
So, but as well as turning down Die Hard for this, Mel Gibson turned down a role in The Fly. So imagine that. Speaking of Jeff Goldblum,
yeah,
can't imagine it have that same
anybody doing The Fly
crazy intensity as Jeff Goldblum. And I think we touched on this in our Untouchables episode, but he was Mel Gibson was offered the role of Elliot Ness, but turned it down for this.
Yeah, I think I could see him take it. This is no slant against Kevin Costner. I could see Mel Gibson doing Kevin Costner roles. I couldn't see him doing Bruce Willis roles.
Also, I mean, I think this is a bit of a left field one, but apparently Michael Biehn was considered for the role of Riggs after Donner had seen him in The Terminator, but he was busy filming Aliens at the time, because he was drafted in last minute for James Remar, so he didn't get the role of, he was cast quite late in the day for the role of Hicks.
Say, Michael, we got a role for you. So what is he? I've got NAM service yet. Am I still in active service? No, you're not. You're a retired cop. Not interested.
But apparently Shane Black stated he wanted William Hurt to play the role of Martin Riggs when he was writing it, but studio executives said Hurt was too obscure for the part, which I kind of agree with. However, there's some interesting choices for the role of Mr. Joshua. So, James Woods, crazy in real life. Christopher Walken,
always a good bad guy.
Tommy Lee Jones, Keith Carradine, and Scott Glenn.
Is Keith Carradine brother to David Carradine?
Correct.
I'm good at this game.
And Scott Glenn is good character actor, been in lots of stuff. He's the guy that he's the drug dealer in Training Day that Denzel Washington kills. You know, the old guy.
I do.
And he's also in Man on Fire. I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
Anyway, and for the role of Murtaugh, as I say, ethnicity wasn't a factor. So Brian Dennehy was considered, but turned it down because...
Oh my God, I'm just thinking of a film like Brian Dennehy, and then you could have had Stallone as Riggs. That would have been brilliant.
But Brian Dennehy turned it down because he'd played cops before in First Blood and FX. But Dennehy and Glover had appeared in the film Silverado, which I think is a Western.
It's a Western, yep.
Is Kevin Costner in that, or am I thinking of something else?
Yes.
Because small role.
Tombstone's the one with...
Kurt Russell
and...
Michael Biehn.
And Val Kilmer.
And Bill Paxton.
That's a good film.
Good film.
I really like Tombstone.
We should add that to the list. Let us know.
Yeah. But yeah, Silverado was not as good.
Not
as good. And that's all we're going to say. And
Silverado was not as good as other films.
And we will not be doing it.
And we will not be covering it in Retro Ramble.
So is that all of Coulda Woulda Shoulda?
Yep.
Which brings us to suspicious spin-offs.
So, the obvious one is...
Prequel,
Nam stories.
Yeah, I want to see them both in
Shadow Company.
Or just a different type. I think, because we talked about this, I'm not sure how much we've talked about in this live, but George and I have been talking about the darker version of this film that Shane Black wanted to make. And a lot of that featured a lot of flashbacks to Nam. And that could have been because this is, I think we should obviously... When we're recording this, there has since been, I'm not sure, very successul series of Lethal Weapon.
They had a few seasons.
I haven't watched any of it.
I haven't watched any of it.
Because obviously we're so loyal to the original.
But no, apparently, I think it had like 3 or 4 seasons.
But if you were going to reboot the films and do it in a very different genre, that could be interesting where you introduce the characters through flashbacks of them actually in active service in Nam. That would be a spin-off that I would watch. In terms of, obviously, it's always difficult to talk about spin-offs when we're talking about a franchise of 4 films.
Well, that's it.
So it's like, what would you see that you haven't seen? Less Joe Pesci.
Leo Getz.
He's not that bad.
But yeah, I mean, I say, it's tough. And I think we faced this before with other films, that when there's been so many sequels, there's been TV spin-offs, it's hard to come up with an amusing, suspicious spin-off. However, my pitch is At Home with the Murtaughs. So it's basically a hilarious Cosby Show style shenanigans that are frequently interrupted by horrific violence. Oh no, that's Lethal Weapon 4. So yeah, that was it. So it's like, that was my fun take, but it's very hard, I think, to go stray too far from the formula.
And also, we can't really talk about a funny spin-off of this film because it already exists and it's Loaded Weapon 1, and we've mentioned it. Go, if you haven't seen it,
check it out.
Yeah, Emilio Estevez and Samuel L.
Come
Jackson.
round, we've got it on DVD.
We'll come round, you can come watch it with us because we watch it whenever we're drunk, which is occasionally.
Quite often.
So that was Suspicious spin-offs. So that was Lethal Weapon 987. Next time, do we have any idea what we're going to be back? It's going to be Christmas. It's going to be the end of the year.
Well, no, this is our Christmas episode.
Well, this is to get you in the mood. This is December.
Yes, so this is so a quick shout out. I know a few people have told me recently they are going to be listening to this on their instead of Chris Rea, they will be putting this on the driving home for Christmas. So Ali Ewan said he'd be listening to this on the drive back, and I think Sam Smith said he would listen to our last Christmas episode, which was Die Hard. Speaking of which, we should plug our next up and coming live show.
Yes, because we, obviously, dear listeners, you'll remember we covered Die Hard last Christmas on the podcast. Well, we are actually doing another live show.
A hosted event.
Yeah, a hosted screening.
It's probably more accurate.
Yeah, so
legally accurate.
So this is once again back in the northeast of England. We are scheduled to be doing some shows in London and further afield, but right now it's so that's going to be the time of miracles. We will be doing a shortened version of the show before a screening of Die Hard.
Yeah, so that's on Tuesday, 3rd of December at Bobbick's, which is in Newcastle at the Punch Bowl in Jesmond.
And plenty more information about the availability and the times.
Oh, we'll be plugging the shit out of it on Facebook
all the channels.
And all the channels. But yeah, tickets are free. It's a great venue. There's a good bar, good selection of ales, and it's Die Hard, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah,
so,
and you get to see George and I in the flesh.
In the flesh.
There will be prizes. There will be games. We turn suspicious spin-offs into a game. And
audience participation
is, you could say, suggested. Others might say mandatory.
Mandatory. So yes, we've got that coming up in the near future, because obviously this will be going out end of November, and then we have our hosted event for Die Hard. But we are going to be sticking in terms of what we're going to do, sort of coming out end of December. We're sticking in the buddy cop genre, and we are fast forwarding to 95 and 2003.
Bad boys, what you gonna do?
For the imminent release of Bad Boys for Life, which comes out in January, yes, we are going to do a Bad Boys special. So we are getting our Michael Bay on.
Michael Bayhem, not just one film, but both films.
Yeah, we thought we'd cover both of them.
Well, as you've heard us talk about in this episode, it's difficult to talk about Lethal Weapon without talking about the other films in the franchise. However, Bad Boys 1 and 2 standing alone as they do, it's worth covering them both. They're two actually very different, yet very similar films. And I'm looking forward to...
And are indebted a lot to Lethal Weapon, as I realised when I was watching Bad Boys the other night.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Some would say a Bad Boys, a Lethal Weapon of the 90s. It very much did take that mantra. So it'll be that.
And we've got our review of the year.
Yes, which we are already recording. We'll be recording in bits and bobs.
Yeah.
But that's where George and I review our... we are right back in present day. We are reviewing the films that have been out in 2019 and the blockbusters.
Yeah.
The ones we've seen, because we find it easier to review films that we've seen. Anything else you want to plug? You got a book coming out? What do you have for dinner?
No books coming out. I do have a line of knitwear in the works, but so stay tuned.
Okay. So that was Lethal Weapon. I've been Charlie McGee.
I've been George McGee.
Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
What's going on here? Drop your gun, Mr. Luger. I don't have one. You are not carrying a weapon. Don't believe in them. Pick up the gun. Drop the gun, Mr. Luger.
Don't do it.
Drop the gun, or I shoot your partner.
He's gonna shoot me anyway. Drop it, we're both dead. Wes, shoot him. Come on, shoot him! Shoot him, shoot him, shoot him!